Good, happy Saturday. I was going to say good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. And welcome to the latest installment of Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon. I am joined by Charles Kirkland. What's going on, Chuck?
Hey, what's happening? Good to be here.
And in a moment, guess who's coming back for the first time in 3 months?
You know what's great about this is as many times as I've talked to Wilson Morales, this will be my first time actually putting eyes on Wilson Morales.
He's connected. I don't know what's happening, but we see his name from blackfilm.com. The myth, the legend, my brother from another mother out of NYC who's playing coy right now because he ain't putting his picture up there. Wilson Morales, what's going on? Nothing yet? All right, cool. He's working it out, man. So it's happy Father's Day to everybody. Happy Juneteenth to everybody. Wilson Morales is in the house. What's up, Wilson? This is New York technology for you right here. See what I'm saying? Brother called me up a couple of minutes ago talking about, I got to be on camera for this? Yes, we're on camera. Wilson, we right here, man. What's up?
He says,
he's like,
be right back.
So anyway, man, happy Juneteenth to one and all, man. Oh, damn. Well, we were getting rain. I guess nobody wanted to hear the rain. Welcome to the show, man. Latest installment of Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. Tim Gordon here, host of your show. Charles Kirkland, co-pilot, sitting here on the ones and twos. And in New York, it is Wilson Morales, who I'm just laughing because, I got to call in. I got to be on camera. Yes, Wilson, you got to be on camera, man. What? We can't hear you, Wilson. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
Okay.
There it is.
I got this last minute, can you do the show? 10 minutes. I was like, okay. I didn't no Zoom. You told me after the fact.
I'm sorry, man. I apologize, man. Hey, Wilson, we're gonna be on Zoom today and in the near future, if that helps.
Okay.
So we normally would kick off, man, and kick it around with like some stuff that's happening. Since we are still in month 3 now of our, actually, it's still June, so it's month 3 of our COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to lead off with Wilson because we have not heard Wilson give a report on this show since March, man. And there is tons of stuff happening, brother. So let's get it. Hit it.
Well, it's a matter about there's stuff that's old and it's what's relevant now. And obviously, right, as we're entering, depending where you live at, phase 2 of, normalcy in some ways. It's a question of what we as press have been talking about. Are we going to be able to go to the theaters and, do our day jobs as opposed to staying home and watching these screeners? And the last few weeks, everybody's been talking about, Christopher Nolan and Tenet and whether or not, he's going to be the one to lead the charge to getting people back in theaters, and I don't know if you saw it recently. AMC was, well, you don't need a mask, which started an uproar and started people twittering boycott AMC. And I think all the studios must have just called each other and like, yo, we got to force AMC's hand. And basically AMC did an about face and said, you know what? I think you could probably bring a mask to the theaters now because they need it. As it is right now, Disney's on the clock with Mulan because they're the first major studio with a film July 24th. I have not seen any advertisement for it, so there was speculation early that they may just, I won't say dump it, but give it to Disney Plus. And they won't know more until they see what kind of numbers Hamilton brings in. Because Hamilton will bring in numbers, that 4th of July weekend. So if they feel that they're going to get a big enough audience there, they just make the toss, but they may just take the loss financially and just bring it to Disney Plus, which would then put Warner Brothers back on the clock with Tenet, July 31st. And, that's not just the movie that's going to play in some theaters, also going to play in IMAX. So the question is whether or not we, as the press, are going to be comfortable going back to the theater and then telling our audience that if the film is good, oh, the film is good, you should see it there. Like basically advocating for the theaters.
So a question to you, Wilson. You and I have talked. I got you and Sean Edwards out in Kansas City on the phone in multiple conversations, and we were talking about this about a month ago. Are you feeling any more comfortable going back to a theater right now?
At this point right now, no, not necessarily. I've stated that either the studio or the theaters will have to make a statement in regards to what safety measures are just doing. You can't be tone deaf and not know what's happening and just say, "Oh, we're open." It's like no.
Okay, well, let me jump in, Wilson. So what I was told from a studio rep, and I'm sure you've heard some stuff too, is that they want to bring critics back in for screenings at 25%. So if it's a 300-seat house, we'll admit 30, 40 critics. They want to put one critic in one chair and then space out 11 seats, so it's 12 seats between critics. Would that make you comfortable to go back to the movie? I already know what my answer is, but I'm asking you.
Well, as somebody who's seen movies in closed spaces, meaning more like screening rooms, and rarely do we do a lot of the all medias, which is where a lot of the press and other people get in. If you're going to invite people to a screening or theater, and you're inviting a third of that group, let's just say you invite 5 of us here to watch it at 1 o'clock and another 5 to see it at 3 o'clock. That may be doable. At the end of the day, I love movies, and I want to see movies. And so long as you're giving me an angle in which there's some sort of protection, maybe there's a possibility, but we have to wait and see. If theaters were open now in June, come July, it'd be a different answer, as opposed to like you're opening up the week before the theaters are open, before the movie hits the theaters. So if they were open now, then there's plenty of time to work out like whatever kinks you need to do in terms of safety measures, which is what's happening overseas. Overseas theaters have opened up, and they're gradually seeing, even though there's no movies being played, they're gradually seeing an uptick, because at the end of the day, having been quarantined for months, people need a reason to come out.
Yeah.
Now the question is, well, being that we've had a lot of people unemployed, are people going to want to spend their money, $20 plus popcorn, plus parking, plus popcorn, plus parking to go see a movie? When that $30, $40 can go elsewhere.
Right. I mean, it's funny. And we're online with Wilson Morales from blackfilm.com. Charles Kirkland and I having this conversation as it relates to when can we get back in theaters. And I saw Christopher Nolan, move the date of Tenet back from mid-July, I think it was the 17th, back to the 31st. And I called or texted Charles. I was like, good luck, bro. Because it still does not endear me or make me want to go back into theaters any point soon. And to Wilson's point, which I totally agree with, I think it's going to be tough. It's a tough ask right now. These are hard economic times, man. We got anywhere between 20 to 40 million Americans out of work. I was just on the phone with Charles before we did the show today that they announced yesterday that the protections for people who had rental insurance are going to expire at the end of the month. So mass evictions are going to be taking place. Economically, this is not a good time right now. And I understand Universal, Warner Brothers, the other major studios want to get back to business as usual. AMC and some of the other theater chains, they want to start getting people working again. But we love movies too, but at the same time, we have a responsibility for our own personal safety. And then you're talking about, what do we tell the audience? The audience, Wilson, ain't dumb. They know. They realize that even in good times, a lot of these movies aren't good in their escapism. But you're right. People have been quarantined for 3 months. They want to get out the house. They want to get back to a sense of normalcy. So I still think it's too early. What was it? Wonder Woman that moved back to October? October is also kind of in that range of what Dr. Anthony Fauci has been talking about in the second wave and that we're going to have in the fall. So I don't know, Wilson. My gut to you is the same thing I told you about a month and a half ago. I don't think we actually see movie screenings again for the rest of 2020. Unless somebody comes along with something that can show me different, I just don't see it, bro.
No, people are out there, you've gotten comfortable now watching movies at home. Obviously a lot of these studios with movies that they don't think are going to be blockbusters are putting them on demand. King of Staten Island, The High Note. You know, you've got these movies out there that no one's talking what kind of numbers they're bringing in. With the exception of Universal, who had the Troll movie to the chagrin of AMC, or oh, you want to talk about that? You're doing well without us theaters. Therefore, we're not going to play any Universal movies. So I don't think other studios want to play that because there needs to be a synergy. There needs to be a synergy. My phone.
I saw it. I was laughing.
In terms of theaters need studios. They need the big movies to attract audiences. Because if theaters go down, then the studios go down. And it's almost like that banking movie, Too Big to Fail. It's sort of like if there's no theaters, AMC was on the brink. I don't know what stage they're at now. But if there's no theaters to put these movies in, investors are not going to commit to putting up to making $100 million budget if there's no way of making that money back.
Right.
It's sort of like, people take those chances to make a $200 million movie, Too Fast, Too Furious. The Fast and Furious movies, it made $2.4 billion the last one. Well, so Universal was smart enough and was like, listen, we're going to take a hit if we put this movie out this year. Let's just wait till next year. Let's see what happens. I don't think, cinema is going to be the same in terms of box office grosses. It's going to take time before people do that, unless there's some sort of miracle cure that comes out of the way. But
called the vaccine.
Was it the vaccine or who knows? But at the end of the day, it's sort of like, if there's no movies in theaters because they keep pushing back and these theaters crumble, investors are going to be like, no point on making a $80 to $100 million movie if where the dividend is going to come from. You're certainly not making it from people ordering on demand. I know lots of folks who are like, you know what, between HBO Go and Hulu and Disney and Netflix. They're already paying $7.99, $6.99, $12.99, and so forth. So it's sort of like, oh, I'm paying $11.99 for like Netflix, but I got a lot of options. Do I want to spend $20 on one film? When that $20 can go towards playing, at least, if you combine it, maybe two streaming services that's $7.99 and $6.99 for an entire month.
Yeah.
So it varies as to what and then for those who can't afford it and by other means, they're like, I'll get the Fire Stick, I'll break it, and I'll get what I need.
Right.
Like I know folks who are like, when people are asking me like, what's out there, like what's on demand right now. And I'll just say, oh, people are literally calling me and goes, what just came out? Boom. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I see it. I was like, what do you mean you see it? It's on my Fire Stick. I'm like, what? Folks are not looking to pay. These movies are there. They're finding ways to see it, which is why some movies do not want to go on demand because they know once it's out there.
It's out there.
And especially if it's a clear copy on demand, all it takes is one person to buy it and then put it on these sites that you can't track.
Okay, stop right here. I'm going to do a disclaimer. We're not saying that's how you should consume media. We're just saying what we heard.
Yes, what we heard. I'm always an advocate. Like you should see a certain movie, like a Christopher Nolan movie. Obviously, he's a fan of cinema. He's a fan of technology. He wants you to see his movie on IMAX because that way you can look at the scope that he put his movie in, which is great. But the question is, do we want to see it now? That is the question.
Right. All right, Wilson. As always, good information. Let people know where they can follow you because you have been one of the constants in the middle of all of this, man, that has continued to bang out information. Where can people follow you, man, and read your content?
You can follow me on, it's Black Film. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
All right. Before you go, I just want to get your reaction to the kind of the most silent award nomination announcement that happened 2 days ago with the 4th annual Black Reel Awards for television. Watchmen and Insecure led the pack with 10 nominations each. This Is Us got nominated for 7. The big news was that neither This Is Us or Queen Sugar were nominated for Best Drama this year, which I found to be quite shocking. What is your reaction as a voter, Wilson Morales, to Watchmen, the news of Watchmen, Insecure, as well as This Is Us?
Well, I think people think of when they're voting, what's popping now. You know, it's the same thing like the Oscar race. Why studios decide to put movies out in the fall, because it's fresh in your mind. You know, so if you come out with a movie that's in January, and I'm just using them as an analogy, if you come out with a movie in January of the year, knowing you got to come up with the money to repackage that film and remind people of that movie in the fall, that's a lot. So This Is Us, you know, when you look at social trending, it's a question of like, okay, Insecure has done well because people are watching on a Sunday. And we're voting now, and
they're watching it now. Yeah.
Yeah. And same thing like Watchmen. It's kind of funny. I rewatched Watchmen last night as they aired a lot of these shows and films during Juneteenth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, HBO had the #1 ladies detective agency, old one. You know, FX played Atlanta. You know, I watched the Watchmen. I'm like, Regina King is good.
She's killed that role,
and
Sister,
sort of like,
Sister Night. Woo.
You know, if there's anybody that's been more perennial, especially being Black in the last few years, it's her.
Yeah.
Which is good because we haven't had that in a long time. In the last few years, we've seen Sterling K. Brown, you know, up in there. You know, we've seen Andre Braugher for Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
mm-hmm.
Anthony Anderson. In terms of being consistent, you know, Issa Rae, I think, was nominated for a Golden Globe, but hasn't gone back to the dance. You know, so it takes a lot to even be in the running. But what you did for Black Reels, we're recognizing the Black talent,
mm-hmm.
which is, hey, we've seen them all, and we're just looking at, okay, who's hot right now?
Oh yeah.
You know, because it's easy to remember who's hot right now as opposed to who was hot back then.
Yeah, that race, the other one part, and we're going to probably have some conversations because we're going to give the awards out on August the 6th. But I think the category where there's going to be the most fighting is that TV limited series Best Actress. Now, Regina King is in there with Watchmen, but you also have Anjanae Ellis for the Clark Sisters, First Ladies of Gospel. You've got Tandy Newton in there. I mean, that whole category. I was like, wow. I mean, on any other year, if you took Regina King out, because I still think she's head and shoulders, man. She's the woman right now.
Here's the thing, and it's a shame that the movie has to be in the same category with limited series, because Anjanae Ellis was in one movie that played on one night, whereas Regina King is in a 9-episode weekly series.
In an arc, with a story arc.
Yep. You know, with a story arc. So there's time for people to get to know who you are, as people are buzzing about, oh, did you see it? Did you see how Regina King is doing it? You know, no one's talking to Clark Sisters now. It had a big bump when it came out.
Right.
But, you know, with the Watchmen being on weekly, the same as Insecure and some of these other series, there's plenty of time for them to grow an audience, and for that, especially since we're all homebound, and for an audience to see it week after week.
Right. All right, bro. We can keep you on, man, but you got to go. You know, I'm gonna need you next week when we do this. That we need to get you into a stable office sort of a situation. You see how we sitting back? Look at Charles over there. Come on, man. You standing in the hallway like, what's up?
This is like the stand last minute trying to figure out. I was actually cleaning up, and I'm like, okay, let's not put it here. Let's just put it here. We get a little bit of light, you know. Until I set my situation.
But I appreciate you, man. Hey, Wilson, thanks for everything you do, man. Appreciate you.
Okay.
Miss you, bro. I'm glad to finally get you back on, man.
It's good seeing you.
Great to see you, Wilson.
Yes.
He's saying this is the first time he's ever seen you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we'll see each other next week.
All right, so brother, you take care, man.
All right.
All right. Happy
guys.
Juneteenth to you too, man.
Yes.
All right. Of course, that is Wilson Morales from blackfilm.com, who joins us at the top of every show. Sound familiar, Charles?
It does. We're getting back to a state of normalcy with our show.
Yeah, man. Brother made some good points, though, man. I mean, but it's some of the same things that I've been talking about for months, man. There's this balancing act, Charles, that's going on, that we want to try to return to a sense of normalcy, but then at the same time, we have to also understand that there is no vaccine, and we've got to come in with a lot of common sense. Wear your mask. In our business, we wear gloves. For folks who don't wear gloves, keep your hand sanitized, keep your hands clean. Try to make sure that you're exercising many safety, not concerns, but as many safety tenets as you can, or protocols, thank you, as you can during this time. But it's going to be difficult, man, to get mass crowds together, man. A couple of months ago, we had to cancel our film festival for that reason, because the state of Maryland is basically telling us, like, nah, you can't have groups larger than, is it 50? Are we at 50 now in Maryland?
We are at 50 now in Maryland.
All right, so we're at 50. But then even if you're at 50, you've got to have the public confidence that they trust that you find 50 people that want to get together and congregate to do something like that.
And there's a certain ebb and flow to this too, because I don't know if you heard that there's some places that are starting to have a surge in cases again, so things are getting halted or slowed down. So I mean, we can't go too quickly, but we can't not go. As far as Wilson was talking about, some movie is going to have to be a test case where we're just going to have to go and try and see it, and it may be Tenet.
Well, I think the thing that when you talk about a test case, man, think about this from the economics of our business, right? So movies are not designed in 2020, or hadn't been designed up to this point, to not be blockbuster films. Like these tentpole films that were supposed to be released in the summer are releasing in this period for a reason, because they know under normal circumstances, you've got the Asian markets, you've got the European markets, you've got North America, which represents 37% of the world. And Disney, Universal, any other studio that has a tentpole movie would be, for people watching at home, would be a big event film. Think a Marvel film, think a Tom Cruise Top Gun, think Wonder Woman 1984, think Tenet. These are all tentpole films that are films that studios put a date in the ground. They roll their film out. They invest between $100 to $200 million in a budget, and they want to see $1 billion at the global box office. So North America, we always try to educate people that, you see the numbers here, and if a movie makes $230, $400 million, that's cool. They want that money that represents 63% of the world. And if the world is down right now, you don't have a huge film going market in Europe or a huge film going market in Asia, these studios would rather sit on these movies and try to wait until the market is there, as opposed to just throwing it out there and taking the proverbial L. So when you say there's got to be a test case, some studio is going to lose millions of dollars to test the theory, Charles, that you're just talking about. We need a movie to get back in the theaters. And now the key is going to be, it's got to be a big movie, because you can't roll out a movie that people can watch on a streaming service as a test case to get people back in the theaters. Like The High Note wouldn't have worked. The King of Staten Island won't work. No disrespect to Spike Lee, but The Five Bloods is not a test case to get people back in the theaters. You need a movie of, I don't want to say of substance. You need a tentpole movie, like something like a Jaws back in the day, or a Star Wars, to see if this works and you can get people back. But what studio is going to make the sacrifice to put a movie that they had already put on their ledger as $1 billion movie in the theaters that might make a quarter of that? Who's going to do that?
I don't think anybody in their right mind would do it, which brings us to another conversation we may want to have, because the Oscars were pushed back. We still, in the fall, we're going to have all our prestige movies
Right.
Are they going to get released? Are we going to see them in theaters? Because Oscar does have a requirement for theatrical release as a component of eligibility.
Well, I think
So
Oscar
we're
has shown you that they're changing their rules this year. So I don't know what Oscar's going to do, man. I really don't, man. I think everybody is waiting because every other award show follows Oscar's lead. And you saw, was it the Globes or who was it? There was another organization. Was it BAFTA? Somebody announced something immediately after Oscar. And my apologies, I don't know. I just saw the email that came out a couple of days later. They moved their show to early April as well. So I don't know. We're in we have a lot of unknowns that are going on right now, but I do know one thing for sure, that we have about 10 minutes to go. So you told me that there's a new show that debuted in the middle of Father's Day this weekend now, which is now known as June Father's Day weekend. Juneteenth and Father's Day combined in a weekend.
okay, if you say so. I don't know.
I'm just saying, it's Juneteenth. It was yesterday, and Father's Day is tomorrow. So we're kind of sandwiched in between. So it's this whole weekend. You were talking about, was it Dads? Is the name of the show on
yes,
ABC?
Released on Apple TV called Dads.
Oh, on Apple TV. I'm sorry, my apologies.
On Apple TV, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
What?
And with some assistance from her father, Ron Howard. And it's actually just a bunch of stories of different celebrity fathers and how they're doing fatherhood. Neil Patrick Harris, Anthony Anderson, Kenan Thompson, just Will Smith, just a whole list of fathers and what being father is about. And I think it's a great primer for Father's Day. It's something that you can sit down with your family and watch on Father's Day. It's very touching, very emotional. I enjoyed it a lot.
So let me ask you a question, man, because before we go, I just want to make sure we hit this. Think of one film that you would recommend if somebody came to you right now and said, "Hey, Charles, I know you're a film critic, man. What would you recommend that me and my family can watch for Father's Day?" And think about it in the context of where we are right now as a community. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's so obvious. Like there could be a strong Father's Day message in it. There could be a strong message about responsibility. And since I put you on the spot, I'll go first, man. How's that?
You're gonna say The Godfather?
No, I was not, because I'm gonna find a film from somebody from a black perspective. What I'm looking for. It's a good question, man. There's so many movies. I just watch. Ironically, what I thought was a good message for Father's Day. If you didn't watch The Five Bloods last week after we talked about it, The Five Bloods has an amazing father-son story arc that happens within the context of the film, which I think was very heartwarming of how it played out, because it shows that every father-son situation is not always this really smooth path. And sometimes it's rocky, but as my father famously told me while he was still with us, it doesn't matter if you get it now or if you get it later. The key thing in life is to get it. So in that story, that was a story that it took them a long time to get there, but they got there. So I would recommend The Five Bloods if you rewatch it again from the perspective not just of this friendship of these four men, but looking at the subplot that happens in the relationship between Delroy Lindo's character and Jonathan Majors' character, the father-son element that I thought, to me, warmed my heart. Charles?
If I were to pick one, we spoke earlier about Dee Rees having done a couple episodes of Space Force, which is on Netflix.
Right.
I think Mudbound actually would be a good pick for a Father's Day tale. It's a little, maybe a little depressing. I think it's good for these times, which shows when Rob Morgan played the father in that family and you was struggling to keep it together, the struggles that a black man had to go through back in that era as well. So I think it was a really good mix of heart and emotion and reality for fathers in that time. So
Okay.
Mudbound.
That's a good choice, man. I mean, Rob Morgan was fantastic in that movie, and he was also in The Last Black Man in San Francisco with Jonathan Majors, who was in that film as well. Now, before I get out of here, I was having a conversation last night about, because, you know, every network was putting on, as Wilson, you heard Wilson say earlier, about all this Juneteenth programming. I implore you, if you, well, two things really quickly. Oh, that's nice. I just got a note from Zoom. Thank you. Zoom must be listening and going, we're going to cut you off, but y'all are good. Y'all keep on going. I was going to say that if you are looking to watch something you've never seen before, and in the spirit of Juneteenth, which is the weekend, because, you know, they gave it the day yesterday, but I'm giving it the weekend along with Father's Day, I implore you, if you have Amazon Prime, to go on and find the documentary from Raoul Peck that we talked about last week, I Am Not Your Negro. That is absolutely fantastic, where James Baldwin talks about, or had started publication of a book, or the writing of a book, I should say, in 1979 called Remember This House, which talked about his relationship with the three giants of the 1960s in the civil rights movement, who ironically, his names all started with M's: Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. Fantastic, with Samuel L. Jackson narrating as the voice of James Baldwin. Fantastic. The other thing, and I shared this with Charles, is earlier this week, somebody anonymously sent me a link to listen to a podcast called You Must Remember This, based on the song that Sam Dooley Wilson plays in Casablanca. And in the podcast that I was listening to, and I forget the young lady, I'm going to actually invite her onto our show and talk to her because I thought it was fascinating. But she was doing a series called 6 Degrees of Song of the South. Now, Song of the South, of course, is the 1946 Disney film that is probably, along with Porgy and Bess, two of the historically most racist depictions. And I should add also a third one would be Birth of a Nation. So 3 of the most heinous depictions of African Americans on celluloid are in these 3 films. And Song of the South was, from what I understand now, was re-released 3 times after its release in 1946. The most recent time was back in 1986. I actually found a copy last night of Song of the South, and I was sharing with Charles that I had started watching the first 5 minutes, and I've got to watch this thing in pieces. It is so racist that I've got to watch it. I'm going to watch it because that's my job, and that's what I do. But man, I cannot in one sitting sit down and watch Song of the South. And I was telling somebody I host a series at my church called Uptown Saturday Night. I said I would really like to show that as an Uptown Saturday Night movie and get the feedback. But remember, Charles, what I always tell you, when you're watching these movies, man, despite the fact it's 2020, you got to watch it with a lens from the past, because if you don't, you're gonna sit there and be like,
what were they thinking when they were making this movie? But if, like you said, if you look at it with the lens of the time, you can clearly see what the thoughts were going on in the nation at that time, and you know, it reflects it in. And I even think about movies like Dumbo would still have some racist connotations to it when you get to those birds. So it was all over the place at the time because that's what the time was, and that we talked about that last week when we talked about Gone with the Wind. So yeah.
Well, let me pull her name up because her series, there were so many nuggets about Song of the South because she broke it down into like a 1-season podcast where she came on every week. And we give you these nuggets about Walt Disney and the adaptation of this book, and how at the time the NAACP and other organizations were putting pressure on her, pressure on Walt Disney to try to rewrite the script. He wouldn't bring in anybody black at the time to help with sensitivity. He brought in, ironically, a communist Jew to help work on the story. And the reception of this film was so bad, it ruined his career. He never made another movie or worked on another movie after Song of the South. How Paul Robeson was Walt Disney's first choice to play the role that James Basquiat once famously has portrayed.
Paul Robeson to play Uncle
Oh,
Remus?
he wanted Robeson. Robeson was smart enough to go, nah, dog, I'm good. I'm not playing that role. But I think right now in the context historically of where we are, you know, you hear me off camera tell you these stories or tell you about how as a historian I study. Before I became a film critic, I loved movies and I studied the history of African Americans in film. And it would be fascinating to do a separate show where we could talk about race movies, Oscar Micheaux, Hallelujah, Hearts and Dixie, you know, that era from 1920 to about 1950, where there was so much. You talk about systemic racism. You just had racism that was woven into the context, and it would just show up in movies all the time. Ironically, think about this for a second. Hattie McDaniel won the Oscar in 1939 for playing a role where she didn't even have a name. Her name was Mammy in Gone with the Wind. She shows up in a brief role in Song of the South in 1946. So Disney rolled out the red carpet. They were trying to do everything they could to show that we got some darkies over here too. Not my words, but I'm just telling you, we got some darkies too. But at the same time, even in trying to promote their Oscar winner, they had the Oscar winner in another film, an Uncle Remus film, telling stories about Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox. Whew. Stunning how racist some of these stories were. So I'm going to send you the link, Charles, and if you get a chance, we should literally have a talk about this, and I would love to find this young lady and invite her on the air to have a conversation, because I think it's important now that as we talk about events like Juneteenth and we talk about racial justice and we think about the inequities that have happened with whether it was lynchings, whether it was, you know, whatever that has happened to our people, it's also important to understand the role that Hollywood has played, and Hollywood is culpable for their role, which is why pulling Gone with the Wind, we were teasing a couple of weeks ago about that. But I think that there needs to be an education. We need to have conversations around these movies, not just disappear them forever, AKA Porgy and Bess, which I swear is the holy grail of unseen movies. And I intend to find a copy of Porgy and Bess one day and try to just hold my nose and just watch this movie if I can ever find it. But I am going to watch Song of the South later on today.
I think it's important to know where we've been so we know where we are. Sometimes we have to look back, and whether we see minute changes or grand changes, sometimes it's good to know how bad it really used to be, and so that we can know where we are, how far we've come.
All right, brother. Well, I'm going to get up off of this thing, man, in 2 minutes, man. It's funny because all the times I've ever used Zoom, for them today to go, we giving you a gift. You got extra time. I'm like, somebody is watching. Black Lives Matter. For Zoom, like somebody's watching. But Charles, man, you're a father of 4. Am I correct?
3.
I was trying to give you a 4th one. Excuse me, Monique Kirkland. I'm trying to give y'all a father of 4, right?
No.
So first of all, happy Father's Day to you.
Many.
You are funny. Happy Father's Day to you, man, and for all you do. You've had a couple of your sons come in studio, and I've watched them. They are amazing young men. I've met your daughter before. Amazing. Happy Father's Day to you. Is your father with us still?
My father is. I'm going to actually see him tomorrow, but my father-in-law is here.
All right. And my father has been gone since 1996. I've said it publicly. I've written it on Facebook, and I will say it here again. My father was Warner Edward Gordon, who left us in 96. Everything I am in film, I got it from him. He was the guy who sparked the match in me as a 5-year-old kid and put me on the path. Dad, I miss you, love you. Every Father's Day, I'm kind of melancholy. I'm like, yeah. But yet we soldier on, brother. So Charles,
I feel the same. That's what you may notice that there's no skunk in the background this week because I am on location in North Carolina going to go see my dad for Father's Day. So
nice. All right, brother. So in closing, as we tell people every week, please see something good at the movies. Next week for sure I'll come back. Miss Juneteenth is out there. If you can check that out, I think it's on Amazon Prime. You can rent it for like $7. Check that out, and we'll have more movie reviews coming up. And hey man, thank you guys for checking in. We also want to thank Zoom for the gift. I don't know what that means, but thank you for the gift, Zoom, for letting us on. And remember, Black Lives Matter, fight on. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers, and also happy Juneteenth to all my people who are still fighting for freedom. You guys take care, and we will talk to you guys next week. Have a nice Saturday.